I'm ready.
Say when. First policy is DA, fiscal responsibility. Is that the one we're going to first start with?
Yes, and we are live.
All righty. Greetings, everybody. The policy subcommittee, and the first one that I believe we have is fiscal responsibility DA. Anyone have any suggestions, comments on what's been done? Most of this, I have some as we go along, but if anyone wants to go first.
How many comments do you guys want about missed capital D's and capital B's?
Not too many for right now, Dr. Rasner. We're gonna hunt and gather through those again.
They're present in most of the policies today. I just I don't want to be too too petty about these things.
Okay.
Okay. I will ignore the B's and D's, but I do have a question on fraud prevention. Okay. My question was, one, do we want a separate policy on fraud prevention, or does it work best under this one, fiscal responsibility? That's just a question. I'm not sure I care one way or another.
Yeah. So
but I was trying to figure out if.
So I looked in other district policies. So MSBA has that clearinghouse of about 60 or so other districts around the state for this. The MSBA recommendation is that fiscal responsibility is the cleanest place to put it, because typically fraud is a result of a lack of fiscal responsibility. And so that's why they house it under this policy as opposed to a standalone policy.
That's fine with me. I was just wondering. I do have one that I would recommend. They don't call it a whistleblower aspect in this, but you're talking a whistleblower with no adverse employment action against an individual. And this is mentioned in a variety of different parts. It's mentioned on 2, it's mentioned on 3. I was wondering, do we need a separate policy on whistleblowing? And then refer back on each one of these to that? Because that is a big issue.
Mm-hmm.
Are you speaking in terms of the fear factor?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking of have a separate policy as it deals with whistleblowers, because we don't use the term whistleblower, but we say that in a variety of different policies, and in this one we clearly talk about it.
Well, I think in this policy it also speaks to. Mr. Andrew, you can help me out, but I think in this policy it also speaks to really adverse retaliation experiences. So I think that is the highlight of this policy. Director Faulkner, I think your question was fearful of retaliation or fearful of someone coming forward. So I think that is what that speaks to in this policy, just as it relates to the adverse reactions.
Yeah, and I think more of it would be just, we don't have it at the bottom, but adding a cross-reference to policy AC, I think would cover a lot of it, because that gets into our illegal retaliation.
Right. That's why I thought maybe if we cross-reference this one, that would be a good idea.
Yeah, if we can add a cross-reference at the bottom to policy AC, which already gets at retaliation, and it's also spelled out here in the policy as well. The thought process of putting it in the policy is, if somebody's looking into suspected fraud, it's important to have in the policy that they're looking at whether or not there are protections, as opposed to hoping they go down and look at the cross references. Well,
and I think it's also good to note out, and I think, Paul, we always do a great job of this, of letting individuals know, especially cross-referencing the AC, that if you come forward, you are more protected than not, in speaking to the any act that may take place. So I think that's a great point, Kevin.
I have nothing else on that. Which one do you want to do next? Travel expenses or salary deductions?
Is there a reason not just to go down the line?
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm in a car. I don't have them down the line. So just please tell me which you want to go next.
The next one is DCLA and DCLAR. Travel expenses.
Okay.
And Dr. Asner, I'm guessing you want every D and B changed here too.
Hence the question, but I'm sure you'll find all of them.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I do have a question. And that is on 1, 2, 3, 5th line down, prudence. I was just curious. I'm not disagreeing. I was just wondering what does that mean? It says the same economy as a prudent individual traveling on personal business. Just trying to figure out. I know what prudent means. How do you define it?
Yeah, and this is MSBA language, and what it's trying to get at there is basically the same frugality that you would if you were traveling for personal, but if you were traveling for yourself, the savings and things that you would try to do. So booking the most efficient flights versus the most cost-effective flights, those types of things.
Does this include changes that we in turn were making in reference to the fluctuation that we've experienced in reimbursement fees? Is that going to be covered in this travel expenses as well? Down at the bottom, I know that when I read this earlier, we talked, it itemized as travel expenses and stuff of that nature. But is this the meeting too that I was told that we would have to take that issue up, because before the percentage that we were given?
Right, with the rules, I think it's under the rules for travel expenses.
In the regulation.
I agree. It's under this. Yeah, it's under the reg in this one, I believe.
Okay. So we're going to have to, as a board, approve an increase in the amounts that we use for reimbursement, for things like gasoline expenses and things of that nature, since all those costs have risen.
So are we jumping to the regulation, or are we still on the policy?
Can we just finish the policy real quick before we? I don't have any more comments on the policy, but I think it'd be good to conclude.
I'm fine with the policy.
Because in the regulation, the one thing that the regulation does not touch on is the district mileage reimbursement rate, because more of that's tied to local travel, where this is specifically non-local. I do know the district recently switched from the state reimbursement rate for local travel for mileage to the federal rate that's set by the federal government. They do fluctuate it based off of inflation and other factors. I don't know, Dr. Keenan, if you want to speak any more on that piece.
Yeah, we moved over to the federal because it was more reflective of the current gas prices based on instead of the state one. And so that's typically what most districts would do, is you have a baseline for your reimbursement per mileage. And we use that not only just for the travel expenses, but also for people who are itinerant staff within our own districts, from district to district.
Okay. Also,
tell me what. I was just waiting until we go to the regs. I got some questions on.
Okay.
On the regs right now.
Yeah, we're on the regs, and
we're on the
other.
Regs. Okay.
Yes. You want to ask your question first?
Yeah, first page, second paragraph. It's unless the exception is approved by the appropriate district leadership team member or board president, if the if the person traveling is a board member. That is brand new.
That is brand new. That was from looking at other policies. It's odd to have district employees improving whether or not board members can go somewhere. So as opposed to having, the district purchasing department be the one determining whether or not board travel is approved, it adds a layer in there that the board president would sign off on it. But that way the board is approving board travel, not district employees are approving board travel.
Okay.
I think it also, Mr. Andrew, adds a point to ensuring that staff employees are in a space and place where they are always in an equitable mindset, just because it relates to the uncomfortability and sometimes unfamiliarity of that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Who approves travel by the board president?
That's what I was at.
The board president would approve.
We need
the
a
board president?
circle on this.
In the
I would
past,
say that no, you can have one.
Yeah.
in the past,
who approves that?
would. It's the it has been the superintendent.
Can
Well,
we
that
have
may create the same
a circle
conflict of
on?
interest. What about the board vice president?
Yeah,
Approving
you could do that.
travel by the board president. That way it's one person, but it's not somebody who potentially has a conflict of interest.
Yeah,
And
you
it's
don't
still
want to. You
within
don't
the
want to
board.
prove yourself.
So if the board president is traveling, then that would be approved by the board vice president.
Yes.
That's my proposal, at least.
Yeah.
That sounds good. That was.
Okay, that is in.
Same thing. It's on number 3 on the authorization for travel. Board president members must obtain prior authorization from the board president before the board member is allowed to incur travel expenses. We also want to have that circle for the vice president will approve the board president's thing. Would also be nice if we had something after that was shared with the entire board, just to make sure that it's always transparent.
You want the approval or the who's traveling where be shared with the whole board?
Or perhaps
like,
the board member
even
expenses
if it was just
shared by the entire board during
board member expenses during if nothing else during the executive session.
Yeah, just so the board is apprised.
I don't
supposed to be apprised of all kind of board expenses, right? Or all district expenses,
right? And other boards have gotten into trouble because there's been some really bizarre expenses.
Mm-hmm. So,
especially when they were on trips. I want to make sure that we never get to that.
So if we just add the disclaimer, board member travel expenses will be shared with the full board during a regular meeting of the board?
A regular executive meeting.
A regular executive meeting?
That be an executive session.
But Dr. Cuneo, that's not, but would that qualify
fine.
as one of the reasons why we can go into executive session?
So maybe it should be just a regular session, right? It probably should not be considered privileged information.
Okay.
That's a good point.
I mean, that or we could just say share with the full board, and that would mean it could be a Friday packet.
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. Just put it in the Friday packet.
I like that.
information.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like that as well.
I don't want to make a big deal of it. I just want to make sure that if anything would happen, everybody knew what was happening.
Yep.
The board should oversee
All right.
itself, but it shouldn't really. I guess it is public information in a sense.
Right.
I had another question on traveling by personal vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have, if you're traveling by personal vehicle, that the individual has to have proof of insurance. I was just thinking, is the district safe if all of a sudden somebody is traveling on personal business, is traveling in their personal car, and they're going somewhere on board business, and there's a problem?
It is there.
District covered?
It's
Is
traveling
there
by
something
district
that
owned
says-
vehicles or rental vehicles. It's item number 1, I think.
It's, what Dr. Cuneo is saying is in the traveling by district owned or rental, but not under traveling in your personal vehicle. It's not in there.
I was saying their personal vehicle. That's what I wanted to see. The other one I saw, but I didn't see it for insurance for traveling by personal vehicle. I knew when I was with state of Illinois, we always, if we were traveling in our own vehicle and it was on departments, whatever, we had to show proof of insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And it was for a liability factor. But I didn't see it in here. That's why.
So currently we do not.
I'm not sure that the report.
Currently, we do not verify insurance for employees who are submitting mileage. But we could put here, at least in the policy, that is the expectation of the district, that any individual using their personal vehicle for district business has insurance coverage on that vehicle. Is that?
I like that.
A vehicle within the laws of the appropriate jurisdiction or something along those lines. Yeah, I agree.
I like that. I don't want, you know, I don't want to cause people additional problems, but I don't want us to end up getting sued, nor do I want somebody suing us because an individual was on personal business, pardon me, was on district business and they had an accident. Then the umbrella suits. So everybody. So how did you word that? I like what you said, where it's the expectation.
Yep. So any employee or board member who utilizes a personal vehicle for district business is required to abide by all laws of the state in which the vehicle is operated.
Or the jurisdiction. That would cover, everything.
Yeah, by the state or jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Including appropriate licensing and insurance.
Vehicle.
I mean, I assume you have to be insured in most states to drive.
Okay, sounds good.
This would include limited to appropriate insurance.
My question that I would have on this in regards to the upcoming conference in Kansas City, for example, if in fact that a board member is going and they choose not to use their own transportation and rent a car, are we looking at how we then will accommodate that in the event that in making those arrangements for the board members? I know that perhaps I'm the only one who at this point on the board has attempted to use a rental car, but I know that in so much the situation I ran into, Amy was able to make the reservation, and I was thinking that the reservation was made and paid for through credit cards or whatever that the district had, to find out that we had no applications made with any companies to be able to do such a thing that list, who would be possibly capable of renting a car and that may or using a car that's been rented by the district. Now, I know that we all have credit cards and what have you, but I know that sometimes it can be, depending upon the time of month, it can be a considerable long time before the reimbursement is made. And to someone like me who may not have the income of Dr. Cuneo, then whereas that I manage my money in a way that pays off all of my expenses immediately to keep my interest rates and stuff from accelerating on that. So I just wanted to know how are we going to look at any ways that we do that in reference to rental cars?
Currently don't have a plan for rental cars because we don't really access them very often. In addition, the rental car, what you're talking to, Curtis, that's their requirement. I mean, we could have put it on a district credit card, but they're requiring that you have to have your license match your credit card. And so that's when we kick in the reimbursement. We currently do not have a contract with any registered rental agencies for rental cars.
But I was just relating what I was told, that there would have to be an effort made to go through the company, in reference to setting up such an arrangement if that were the case.
Yeah, we require a contract with them. And so that would be like an RFP process to go out for a contract for rental car agencies. And now you are a member and you become a member, which you have to pay a fee for. Currently, we do not do that.
Out of curiosity, would it be worthwhile to do that? I mean, do we do this often enough that we would, that we could cut a better rate with the people?
We typically
I don't know.
we reimburse typically based on mileage for people, or if people do have a rental car and they're on if they're getting a rental car and they're at a professional learning opportunity, we typically just do the reimbursement piece of it. So we haven't really seen a need for going into a contract for that at this time. If that's where the board wants to go and look at, we can look at that in the future.
Well, I will only say this, that, for example, recently, my wife and I took a vacation trip to Tennessee, and she had to make reservations at 4 or 5 different places months in advance because of the lack of cars available. And being able to get certain size cars or certain specifics that you ask and get in a car has become more difficult today. So if in fact that this situation it definitely takes now more time to do so than perhaps it has in the past. In reference to times and availabilities, even Enterprise in Cape Girardeau doesn't have rental cars at their locations anymore. So
can I just ask for some clarification? Is the issue at hand how long it takes to get reimbursed after you pay for the rental yourself?
That's one. And the time now that it takes to be able to make a reservation well in advance, if in fact that you have something that you in turn may need a rental car for, those particular aspects are starting to become, more challenging now to the rental car companies.
And that's kind of to Dr. Keenan's point. That's why we rarely utilize rental cars. Most people, it's in-state travel where they're driving their own vehicle, or they're flying somewhere where, let's say, they're going to a conference and they're going to take a taxi or an airport shuttle or something along those lines because they're going from the airport to the conference where they're staying, attending the session, shuttle back. We really, as a district, minimize the use of rental vehicles for all of the reasons that you just listed, of the challenges of getting the vehicle that you've requested, the issues with billing and those types of things. And so that's why this is in here as a piece of our policy, but we do very, very rarely use rental vehicles.
Well, I just be cognizant. I can see that in the way that these scenarios with cars are, lease cars and what have you, that have mileage restrictions and stuff of that nature, if you in fact are using that car, then you also are subjected to the mileage that you now have restrictions on if you have lease cars. And depending upon, how many miles or whatever your values of that you look at your investment on a car being, the number of miles you put on there, that then may reduce that as well, the value. So I'm just saying that I think that those are things that at least we need to consider in how we move forward with these particular types of services.
Can we
and it says the number 4 on here, approved by the rental cars have to be approved by the purchasing department. So again, I'm looking at the time that might take up in going through that process. If in fact that we're talking about having to do things in a timely enough fashion to be able to even obtain a rental car.
Right. And that's why the whole travel process has to start at least 2 weeks before you're going to go. I believe when we talk about out-of-state travel, it's at least a month before everything has to be approved at least a month in advance before you're planning on going.
But I don't think any of this language that is here would still be able to overcome or still be able to work through a process where an individual has to have a matching credit card and driver's license as it relates to. I think this, if you don't have a matching credit card and driver's license, I think that is the the policy or the procedure or the operating practice of that institution. Am I correct?
Yes, correct. The rental car companies require that they now have to have a matching credit card, or whoever's going to drive the car has to be able to fund the car at that point in time. So even to the point, unless you have that contractual agreement with them that now list that your company has a credit card on file, and that it lists these are the people who have the ability to show their IDs that then can be placed on that particular charge.
Okay.
But I think what we're talking about here is different than our policy. The policies kind of outlines when when there's a rental car usage. What you're talking about is a different piece of that. That's a contract with a vehicle company that requires an RFP. But what's for the purposes of the policy, let's keep focused on what the policy is allowing for. And I think Director Faulkner, you're talking about more of a procedure that's internal and part of an internal process. So we can talk about that more outside of the policy piece of it.
I think the question, as I'm hearing, is that our policies and procedures feel appropriate. The question becomes, at least from what I'm hearing, is does the district want to go to a credit card, to a car rental place and set up an account? That seems to me the question that I'm hearing, because it is the car rental companies' policies and procedures that are saying you need all this, not us. The only way it would be solved, the way I see it, is that if the district decides this is the car rental policy, car rental place they're going to utilize, therefore we're going to put this on spec, these are the individual. That's a decision, I think, that is separate from the rules and the regulations and policy. But we want to do it, we want to do it. I don't know if that's that's something that needs to be specified in policy or procedure.
Yeah.
And possibly from the frugality, I don't know, having not seen that particular item of agreement with the rental car company, but if in fact that there are deductions that then take place in reference to frugality, whereas that as an individual, the car may cost you one thing, to rent, opposed to if the fact that there is a reduction price in the other manner. So, that comes a part of frugality.
You're right, Curtis. It may be cheaper. If a large company says that they'll think they're going to use it more often, we'll give you a better rate. I don't know.
I don't either.
Could we get an update at our next board meeting just about how often the district actually pays for rental vehicles? Maybe in the last year or two?
Yeah, we can do that.
Thank you. Just because I'm not even sure if it's worth the time to look into it. My personal opinion, but if we're paying for a lot of rental vehicles, I guess it's worth looking into. But I also think it's not really part of the policy itself or the regulation. It's just sort of
Yeah, we'll provide that the next one.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else on travel expenses? Anything else on the right? Nothing else. All right. The next one I have is salary deductions. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Other than the B's and the D's, on this one we have a couple.
Yeah, there's also a comma that
Good man, I love it.
On paragraph 3, there's an erroneous comma on, after the credit unions that was deleted, or before it, that probably needs to go too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, yeah, okay, I'll drop it there.
Great, I love it. Thank you.
You're very, very welcome.
No, Sister Redemptive taught me 5th grade English. Would love this. She was a true believer, and you've got to have your grammar correct. My knuckles attest to it. No, nothing else. Can we say that we accept this as is with the changes in the Bs and the Ds?
No, most of this is what I would call Scrivener types of approaches to this. There's been no additional like substantive changes in any regulation of laws that would impact deductions.
Sounds good. Next one, EFE, vending machine sales. I was just curious, not that I'm disagreeing, but we got rid of the vending machine committees.
Yeah, so a couple things on this. One, we're one of the only districts that I could not find another district in the state that still has EFE as a policy. I do understand the rationale for having it on the books, especially when you want to make sure that what's in vending machines is abiding by, healthy food and wellness standards. So I understand the existence of the policy, but when you looked at it in practice, having a standalone committee specifically just to figure out what to do with our vending machines, when this went on the books in 1996, that probably made a lot of sense. You can probably extrapolate when we switched to purely healthy foods and snacks in our vending machines. Our vending machine sales took a pretty substantial hit in our buildings. Yeah, so we sold.
My question: why do we have?
Why do we have the policy at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the purpose of the policy at all, when you look at it, what's left is just saying that we're only going to have vending machines in place that have been approved by chief administrators. So that way there's not something where maybe teachers or somebody else are permitting a vending machine on campus. And then it's also making sure that what we have is abiding by district requirements. That's about it. And it does leave in the language to make sure that it also leaves in that language to make sure that the profits from vending are directly impacting the people who use vending, as opposed to just using as other supplemental thing for in the building.
But there's nothing in this that says you should have healthy foods, correct?
Right. It just talks about it being subject to district.
I know you got a cross reference on it.
Yeah, that's in the cross reference to the wellness program is where that's at under ADF.
All right.
Would it be prudent to have direct language saying that the whatever is sold in the vending machines, the materials offered by the vending machines should be governed by the district wellness program?
We can add that in, yeah. We can say the item served.
In case anybody's wondering if we should be serving Monster energy drinks in the vending machines,
yeah, that's the stuff that kids want us to sell, but we're not going to sell.
I have memories of somebody offering some when I was in high school. Somebody got access to the school and offered all kinds of. It wasn't Mountain Dew, but it was something like it. It was the new Mountain Dew to all the students, and everybody was running around heavily caffeinated for a while.
Red Bull?
No, it was way before Red Bull.
Okay.
All right. How about first professional learning opportunities? Questions on that or comments?
I had a question. It says the first sentence at the end of it says the board commits to high quality professional learning programs. What does that mean? Like, are we committing to offering high quality professional learning programs, access to high quality professional learning programs?
Yeah, so the high quality really speaks to just as it relates to what is being offered and delivered to students. And actually, there was a small change that actually says professional learning and then goes into professional learning improves educator effectiveness. Therefore, the board commits to high quality learning programs, which is another small switch. But that's what that really speaks to, Director Essner.
It seemed a bit. I was trying to understand, like, how in what way are we committing, like, to offer it to? It feels like we're missing something there, but
And I can look at cleaning that up there for the board, Mr. High Quality Professional Learning Programs.
It was there in the original language too. It was, in other words, you were actually staying it was good fidelity to the original sentence. Yeah. I was just trying to figure out how are we committing to high quality professional learning programs? We have to, of course, should.
Well, and I think that, so preluding that is saying that by providing high quality professional learning improves educator effectiveness, and through educator effectiveness, that's how the board is committing through the high quality learning programs.
So, Dr. Asner, do you want to add offering and delivering high quality professional learning programs?
Something, yeah. That would be perfectly acceptable. Yeah. I was just trying to think of how we were. In other words, in what ways would we commit to it?
We could do offering, delivering, and providing. Yeah. So that opens your whole door.
We'll support. Again, this is speaking out of the second paragraph. In support of this commitment, the board will. So to support high quality professional learning programs. I don't know.
Yeah, you define it out in the second paragraph.
Yeah. But again, sorry, this feels more like the B's and the D's. So I'll leave it there.
Okay. Are we comfortable with that then? All right. GCPC, retirement of professional staff members. What was the rationale?
There is a Senate Bill 681 changed the limitations that exist for retired teachers for their ability to work in a substitute teaching capacity. Senate Bill 681 is a temporary change to Missouri Revised Statute. It sunsets in June 30th of 2025, but it is on the books for the next 2.5 years. And so
we will have.
So, which is why we changed the language to say any person retired or currently serving in retirement allowance other than for disability may be employed by the district in accordance with Missouri Revised Statute. So that means as statute changes, those limitations will change, but we don't have to spell all about what that is in our policy. We just have to have the right cross reference down there at the bottom where we're pointing them to 168.036.
Thank you.
I had a follow-up question because I just wanted to clarify. My hope is that this policy would help us to protect anybody who's subbing for us so that they can continue to receive their benefits as opposed to limit their ability to sub for us. I just wanted to clarify that.
And that's the intent of this change is right now, our board policy is more limiting than what Missouri statute is. And so this way we're going to align with statute, which right now means a retiree that's a retired teacher can sub as much as they want for the current school year,
right,
which is my preference.
Yeah. And I just want to make sure our policies support them and make sure that they don't in any way, endanger any retirement benefits that they have.
Yeah. And by us removing this now, nobody's hit that threshold yet. But this ensures that we don't have anybody who winds up in that boat.
Thank you.
Yeah, typically we lose the ability for our retired people to sub in the spring of the year because they've used up all their time that they were allowed. So this would greatly help us being able to sub just coverage for long-term positions and also short-term positions too.
All right, last one. PDPC. I did not see anything on this one. Does anyone have anything at all?
No, I didn't see anything when I read through it either.
Me neither.
And we only brought up this time because we brought up GCPC, so they kind of are a pair.
All right. I believe that is it.
Yep.
All right, everybody, have a safe and enjoyable weekend. All right.
Thank you.
Halloween.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Hey, Dr. Keenan?
Yeah.
Can you stay on for just a minute? I have a quick question for you about something else.
Have we stopped recording?